A new report has shown about 9,000 species of invertebrates in Australia have gone extinct, and we could lose another species or even two this week alone. John Woinarski is a professor of conservation biology with Charles Darwin University. Good morning, Professor John Woinarski. Firstly, what is an invertebrate?
Yeah, invertebrates are a whole suite of animals without backbones. So they include insects, beetles, bees, ants, but also spiders, slugs, snails, centipedes, scorpions, millipedes, a whole range of tiny creepy crawlies that are a rich part of our biodiversity in Australia.
Yeah, plenty of the things you find in the backyard in Australia, or sometimes on the wall in the bedroom as well. But how has the insect population been changing in Australia?
Yeah, there's reasonable evidence that a whole lot of species are declining, and some have become extinct. It's very hard to actually be certain or precise about the actual numbers because we know so little about most invertebrates in Australia. We don't really know how many species there are. We don't really know where they are, what their names are, and how they're faring. The best guess is that there's between 300,000 and 1 million invertebrate species in Australia, of which only about a third are named.
Wow. So why is there this gap of knowledge?
It's the obvious that we like the charismatic mammals and birds, the koalas and wallabies and parrots and the like. And we neglect and even disdain the invertebrate component of our biodiversity. So there's not much resources being put into understanding about invertebrates, and there's not many resources being put into their conservation.
There seemed to be a bit of love on the text line today for the sound of cicadas on a summer's day, and that kind of idea of invertebrates in some sense, that sort of romantic view. But you're very right. It's a different view if you said, would you rather go to Australia and see a redback spider or a koala? I think I know what a lot more people would be happier to support. But how do we know?
There is beauty in some of our invertebrates. You know, they're marvellous creatures. They're really wonderful, do intriguing things, have strange lifestyles. They're fascinating creatures once you take the punt and get to know them and try to find out about them.
Do you have a favourite?
I don't mind the emperor gum moth, which is a large moth restricted to eucalypts in, I think, mostly eastern Australia. But I raised them as a boy from caterpillars, and they were just fascinating.
Oh, I've just quickly searched online, and they're quite fuzzy, aren't they? And they've got these they're beautiful light colour. They're very stunning to look at. What is it in particular that you like about the emperor gum moth?
Oh, it's that transformation they do from really strange-looking caterpillars to cocoons, and then coming out of those cocoons is a totally different sort of creature, a moth that's flying around, a really large moth as well. You know, invertebrates do wonderful things. They're just a fascinating way of living on this earth in a way we don't often conceive. That is a way of coping with the Australian environment and contributing to that environment.
Yeah, how do they contribute to the environment?
No, we're all dependent upon the bugs around us. They do all sorts of things. They purify water, they pollinate native wildflowers and trees and crops, and they form the resource from which most of the larger vertebrates live, the food resources. And they do also, they fertilise soils and turn over soils. They make our country more productive, more resilient and more beautiful.
I know we talk a lot about the importance of bees, but I've also heard that flies and ants are so important in the pollination of our food as well.
Yeah, we'd be nowhere without invertebrates pollinating our crops. It's just impossible to do it at a scale other than through the use of invertebrates. So we'd starve quickly in Australia were the invertebrates to crash even further than what they have done to date.
11 to 11 on 720 ABC Radio Perth and WA. You're hearing from John Woinarski. He's a Professor of Conservation Biology with Charles Darwin University, and we're talking about this study of invertebrates. 9,000 species of invertebrates have gone extinct in Australia, and we could lose another species or two this week alone. We've talked about this sort of gap in knowledge of what we have, but how do we know that they're disappearing?
Oh, we know from all sorts of relatively ad hoc monitoring programs about the trends and trajectories of population for many species, but by no means the majority of invertebrate species. One example is on Christmas Island in the Indian Ocean. There was a really good survey done of all the invertebrates when the island was opened up for colonisation in the 1890s. And there were 50 species of invertebrates described at that time from the island that occurred only on that island, and most of those haven't been seen ever since. So there are some sort of benchmark studies from which we can distill the information that species have gone missing, but also things like Christmas beetles, really obvious ones that most people know of. Our grandfathers and grandmothers knew them to be far more abundant than is the case now. We're losing species, even the most conspicuous of our invertebrates, at a rate which appears to be unsustainable.
And is that rate increasing?
Yeah, we think so. Climate change is ratcheting up a whole lot of the threats that are already affecting invertebrates. So the fire regimes are becoming more serious, more severe. Drought will become increasingly intense, frequent and severe. And the number of hot days is going to escalate as well. Rainfall will reduce. These will change all the environments on which invertebrates depend. And many of the invertebrate species that we're most worried about have tiny ranges. And many of them are relictual species that have been in Australia for millions of years and are dependent upon sort of wetter conditions than is likely to be the case in the future.
Sarah has been in touch on 0437922720. She says, oh my goodness, such a great topic. I just finished an assignment for uni about the importance of conservation of invertebrates in agriculture, especially viticulture, and how little is actually known. So is there anything that we can do at home or, on the farm to stop the growing rate of extinction of invertebrates?
It's like all conservation, everybody can contribute. We can plant more natives in our gardens, and that will help the balance between native invertebrates and non-native invertebrates. We can use insecticides far less than we do at the moment. We can learn about the living things around us, put names to them, buy books that identify them, or go online to figure out what species are what. We can take time and quietly watch some of these invertebrate species and marvel at how fascinating they are. And we can all do our bit to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and agitate more to prevent climate change.
And the emperor gun moth you mentioned is your favourite invertebrate, John Woinarski. But where might people find that? Is that something we could find in backyards in WA?
I'm living in Melbourne at the moment, so I hesitate to admit that I'm not sure that it's in WA. But there's beautiful butterflies, obviously, and beetles in Perth that we should all care about. And everyone will have a different favourite insect, I think.
Robin has said, I've not seen a huntsman or a Christmas spider in my backyard for so many years. It's so sad. Thank you, Robin, for that text. I live in northern WA and we don't really get huntsmans. We get plenty of other spiders and things like that. But yeah, huntsmans, I wonder whether anyone else has noticed fewer of those creeping about the place. Professor John Woinarski, great to catch up this morning. Thanks for your insights.
Yeah, great. Thanks for talking. Take care. Bye.
He's the Professor of Conservation Biology at Charles Darwin University, talking about the extinction of invertebrates in Australia. 9,000 species are thought to have gone extinct in Australia, and we could lose another species this week.